Imagine the following. Somewhere in China, in a mysterious quarry, ancient builders embark on a colossal project. They carve gigantic stone blocks, the largest ever worked by human hands, and suddenly drop everything. Without explanation, without a trace of completion. They simply walk away, leaving behind a monumental question. What was it all for? And now, a city hidden underground. A true subterranean megalopolis with tunnels and chambers plunging tens of meters deep, capable of sheltering tens of thousands of people. And finally, bronze masks. But not ordinary ones. They look so strange and otherworldly that they seem made not merely by a different people, but by a different civilization altogether. One we had no idea existed. Such finds are scattered across the world. They do not just amaze, they baffle. Some are so huge, precise, and complex that they seem to go beyond the capabilities of the peoples to whom they are attributed. And yet, these are not myths, not rumors passed down from generation to generation. These are real objects. You can touch them, measure them, photograph them. Scientists have been puzzling over them for decades, and there is still no unambiguous explanation. In this video, 8 such archaeological mysteries. We will dive into the stories of ancient megaliths, underground cities, bronze masks, and stone circles that are visible only from a bird's eye view. You will learn how they were found, how they were built or attempted, why they might have been needed, and why, even with modern technologies, we still cannot answer all the questions. Some of these places will make you ask, but really, how could this be built without machinery? And others will make you imagine the people who created all of it. People armed with only simple tools, but with unimaginable persistence and mastery. So if you are interested in history, feats of engineering, or simply the unsolved mysteries of the past, enjoy watching on the Top Facts channel. The Yangshan Quarry, megaliths no one could move. On the outskirts of the city of Nanjing, in China's Jiangsu province, lies the Yangshan Quarry, a place where stone has been quarried for many centuries. But in the 15th century, during the reign of Emperor Yongle of the Ming dynasty, something out of the ordinary began here. This was not just another quarry, but a construction site of truly imperial scale. The emperor envisioned a grand mausoleum. Part of the Ming Xiaoling complex was to be adorned with a gigantic stele, a vertical stone monument in his honor. For this purpose, workers began cutting stone blocks from the mountain so enormous that even by today's standards, they inspire awe. And here is where it gets most interesting. The project froze halfway. Stone masses, each weighing thousands of tons, were left in the quarry. They were not just unused, they could not even be completely extracted. The largest block is still connected to the bedrock, and by estimates weighs about 16,000 tons. You heard that right. 16,000 tons. That is heavier than modern naval destroyers. Next to it lie 2 more blocks, slightly smaller but still of monstrous size. Historians believe that all 3 monoliths were intended for a gigantic stele, a monument that was to secure forever the memory of a mighty emperor. Instead, they remained forever part of the quarry itself. Their rough faces, sharp-cut lines, and unnatural scale today look like a scene from a science fiction film. Now picture this spectacle. Under the scorching sun, thousands of workers with hammers and chisels day after day strike form out of monolith. Each blow echoes across the region. The stone does not give in. The work advanced slowly, physically exhausting, and every centimeter was the result of incredible labor. And then, the snag. Because carving the block is only the beginning, it still had to be delivered to the site. and the mausoleum was a few kilometers away, without wheels, cranes, excavators, or other machinery. How? Wooden sleds, a system of rollers, hundreds of people relieving one another. These are only guesses, and it seems the Chinese themselves at some point realized they had overreached. Most likely, the blocks turned out to be too heavy to move. Perhaps even the rough calculations showed the task was impossible, or perhaps resources simply ran out. The Ming era is famous for its gigantic building projects, from the Forbidden City to the Great Wall. It is logical to assume that manpower and materials were reallocated to more realistic goals. One way or another, the project was halted, abruptly and definitively, and that perhaps makes the Yangshan quarry even more captivating. These masses were not destroyed, repurposed, or hidden. They still lie in place, as if waiting for their hour, or perhaps for a new generation of builders who will dare to complete what was begun 6 centuries ago. Derinkuyu, the underground megalopolis no one knew about. And now, an abrupt change of direction, from a dusty Chinese quarry to the very heart of Turkey. Do not rush to look at the map. Even if you are standing right above this place, you will see nothing, because the next wonder is buried underground. It was built not upwards, but downwards. It all began with a banal renovation. In 1963, a man from Cappadocia, that picturesque region in central Turkey, decided to take down a wall in his basement, and he stumbled upon a tunnel. Not a pipe, not a mine shaft, but a genuine passage in rock. Curiosity took over. He went farther. It turned out that behind the wall hid an entire labyrinth of rooms, corridors, and stairways, all of it hewn straight into the rock. Thus, the ancient underground city of Derinkuyu was rediscovered, one of the largest in the world. Today, we know that it descends to a depth of about 60 meters. That is like a 20-story building, but downward. And it consists of dozens of levels connected by steep staircases and narrow passages, sometimes so narrow that only one person can pass at a time. In Cappadocia, the bedrock is volcanic tuff. It is soft enough to cut, but holds its shape well if you do not overdo it. People in these parts had been hollowing out houses, storerooms, and granaries in it for thousands of years. But Derinkuyu is a completely different scale. It is not a temporary shelter, not a cellar or a refuge. It is a fully fledged underground city, with schools, storerooms, halls, stables, and even chapels. Imagine an entire district, but hidden in stone. When archaeologists began to study the city, they were stunned by the scale. Kitchens with soot-blackened ceilings, the traces of centuries of cooking, rooms with niches for storing wine, oil, and grain, halls where large groups of people could gather, spaces resembling classrooms or assembly halls. And now guess how many people could take shelter in this stone anthill. Up to 20,000. Together with animals, ventilation is a masterpiece unto itself. More than 50 shafts supplied fresh air at all levels. Some of them simultaneously served as wells. One could draw water without going to the surface. Animals were kept on the upper levels, so they would not have to be driven up and down the stairways. In case of danger, huge round stone doors, like plugs, could block the passages between levels. But Derinkuyu is not just a fortified bunker. There are chapels and prayer rooms. This means that even underground, life was not limited to survival. There was also a spiritual side. Everything is arranged so that people could live here not merely for weeks, but for months, completely cut off from the outside world. The history of Cappadocia is a succession of civilizations. The Hittites, the Phrygians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Byzantines, the Seljuks, the Ottomans. The region was rich but vulnerable. Trade routes passed through it, which means an influx of wealth but also a constant threat of raids. Who began to dig out Derinkuyu is not entirely clear, possibly the Phrygians in the 8th or 7th century BCE, or the Hittites 1,000 years earlier. The city expanded generation after generation. By the Byzantine period, it was certainly in active use. Christians hid here, fleeing persecution. Later, people took shelter from Arab raids. Some researchers believe that Derinkuyu was connected to other underground cities, a network of tunnels stretching tens of kilometers. In other words, it could have been an underground megalopolis hidden beneath the hills. And now, let us think. How was all this built at all? Tough may be soft, but it is not sand. Thousands of tons of rock had to be taken somewhere. All of it was carried out by hand. Lighting, oil lamps. Imagine working underground, without ventilation and light, with smoke from fire. This means ventilation shafts were planned in advance, before the digging began. That is already engineering planning. Even the architecture is thought out. The walls and ceilings were not just hollowed out. They distribute the weight to prevent collapse. Where needed, load-bearing pillars were left. The older parts are rough and narrow. The newer ones, neater and more spacious. This means the city was built over centuries, and each new people made its improvements. Most archaeologists believe Derinkuyu was a refuge, a place where one could descend in case of war or siege. But one question remains. Why make it so enormous? Why not just a shelter for a couple of days, but an entire underground world? Was it really so dangerous above ground? Perhaps it was not only about threats. Underground, it is cool, excellent for storing food and wine. Or perhaps it was a temporary camp for traders, or even a year-round settlement for a certain circle of the chosen. We know one thing for sure. It is not the only such city. More than 200 underground complexes have been found in Cappadocia, and many of them, according to ground-penetrating radar, are linked by tunnels. Sangsingdui, masks that do not fit any culture. After the somber tunnels under Cappadocia, it is time to emerge into the light. The next chapter of the story is no less mysterious. This time we will not go underground. On the contrary, we will peer deep into time through what was extracted from the earth: gold, jade, and bronze. Welcome to Sangsingdui. The story begins in 1929, when a farmer in China's Sichuan province was digging a ditch and accidentally came upon something strange: pieces of carved jade. The find was not given much attention at the time, and it got lost in the archives. A pity. Because decades later, in the 1980s, archaeologists decided to return to this place, and they were literally stunned. They found 2 gigantic pits filled with thousands of objects: masks, statues, swords, ornaments, strange figures. But that was not what astonished the scholars. It was what they saw. These artifacts were different, completely different, unlike anything previously found in China, as if they had been created by a parallel civilization. The most striking were the bronze masks, huge, up to 1 meter wide, with eyes protruding outward in tube-like forms like antennae, some with massive noses, sharp lines, grotesque shapes, as if masks for titans or extraterrestrials. That is not a metaphor. You really look at them as at something not of this earth. And these are not one-off pieces. They number in the hundreds, bronze figures in full height. One is more than 2 meters tall. It probably once held something in its hands, possibly an ivory object that has not survived. There are 3 sculptures, nearly 4 meters high, with delicate branches and curved leaves. There are masks covered with gold foil, There are jade daggers and figurines of fantastic animals. And now, guess who made all this? For a long time, it was believed that in those times, the center of bronze culture in China was the Shang dynasty. But the finds of Sanxingdui overturned that notion, because their style is absolutely different. Where the Shang are strict, symmetrical, with precise forms, here there is exuberance, abstraction, powerful lines, and strange images, as if an entirely different aesthetic. And essentially, so it is. Today, scholars link Sanxingdui to the ancient kingdom of Shu, which existed in the Sichuan Basin about 3,000 years ago. Geography is a key point. Shu was cut off from the Yellow River civilizations by mountains and rivers. Possibly for that reason, its culture developed independently, in its own way. But here is the hitch. No writing remains. No chronicles, no inscriptions, no explanations. We know everything only from the artifacts, and they tell us this. This civilization had master casters of the highest class, a religious or priestly elite, and trade with far-off lands. Among the finds are seashells, ivory, and stones not found in the region. This means they exchanged goods with quite distant cultures. And then, it all ended. The city emptied. Why? We do not know. Perhaps the climate changed, perhaps resources were exhausted, or something terrible happened, a flood, an epidemic, a war. But the people left, and the memory of them almost disappeared. Almost. The biggest enigma is the eyes, those bulging tube-shaped eyes on the masks. They recur again and again. What are they? Images of gods? Symbols of clairvoyance? Ritual masks? Some researchers believe this is a symbol of spiritual sight, that these figures look not at us, but through us. Some see in this an echo of legends about divine rulers. Others, simply a unique aesthetic. But something else is even more intriguing. Why is there nothing similar among the neighbors, even among those literally 200 kilometers away? The Shang dynasty, at its height when Sanxingdui flourished, did produce bronzes, yes, but not such masks, not such forms. This prompts one to wonder, is Sanxingdui an isolated culture, or an inheritance from an even more ancient people unknown to us? And the final question, why did all these items end up in sacrificial pits? They were not lost. They were deliberately buried. Some are scorched, some are broken. Were these sacrifices, rituals marking the end of an era, or an attempt to hide them from an impending threat? Whatever it was, Sanxingdui is a true blow to our templates. It forced historians to reconsider how they view ancient China. And perhaps this is only a fragment of something much larger that still awaits discovery beneath layers of soil. The big circles. Stone schematics for the gods. We jump from ancient China to a place utterly different. No gold, no bronze statues, only dry earth, sparse shrubs, and endless horizons. Before us, the deserts of Jordan and Syria. And here, in the most unexpected place, circles have been found. Not in fields and not made of wheat. Stone circles, and so enormous that they can be fully seen only from the sky. The story began in the 1920s, when British Royal Air Force pilots flew over the Middle East. From above, they noticed something odd. Perfect circles laid out of stone against the chaotic desert landscape. From the ground, they are almost invisible, but from the air, they stand out at once. Huge geometric forms against the background of sand and rock. Who made them, and why? In those years, of course, archaeology was not the priority. Things were limited to a few notes and sketches. Only in the 21st century, with the rise of satellite imagery, did researchers turn their attention to these strange objects again. And it turned out there are not just one or two, but more than a dozen in Jordan and several more in Syria. The most amazing part? They are almost perfect circles, each about 400 meters in diameter. That is like 4 football fields in length. The walls are low, only about 1 meter high. They're made of local stone, without mortar. The wall widths vary, but one thing is clear. These are not fortresses, not barriers, not animal traps, too low, too open. And here, the fun begins. Why build them at all? First thought, boundaries. Maybe someone wanted to mark territory, to say, "Hey neighbor, this is ours." Such circles are visible from afar, especially from hills. But if so, why are there no signs, no entrances, no artifacts inside? Second idea, ritual platforms. Think of them as stadiums, only without stands and without spectators. Huge open spaces where tribes gathered once a season to perform rites, sacrifices, or dances with drums, quite literally. One fact speaks in favor of this version. It is hard to enter them. Some circles do not even have passages, as if people were not meant to go inside at all. Third hypothesis, artistic. Imagine the desert as a canvas, and these circles, giant symbols, geoglyphs like the famous Nazca lines in Peru, visible from above as if drawn for someone looking from the sky. Gods, spirits, cosmic observers? Who knows? Archaeologists are scratching their heads. There's no organic material for radiocarbon dating. There are almost no artifacts. Dating is difficult, but by assumption, the circles are at least 2,000 years old, and perhaps older. Other strange stone structures are found in these lands, the so-called desert kites. They were used for hunting. They channeled animals into traps. But our circles are nothing like them. No funnels, no guiding walls. Too round, too precise, too strange. And one more detail. Wherever a circle is found, whether in Jordan or Syria, it is almost the same size, as if someone distributed a blueprint, or there were the same teachers, but there is no writing, almost no traces of a culture, only stones, silent, straight, eternal. Tell me, would you lay out a perfect circle 400 meters in diameter without an important reason? Under a scorching sun, in a desert without shade, without water. Spend weeks, months of labor on something that brings no practical use. It is either religion or art or something we do not yet understand. Today, we can see them, measure them, even scan them with drones. But to understand them, not yet. For now, they are merely stone outlines against the eternal sand. A reminder that ancient people could be no less strange, dreamy, and unpredictable than we are. The submerged cairn of the Sea of Galilee, a monument hidden underwater. When archaeologists say unexpected, believe me, it truly means off-plan. So it was in 2003, when scholars were surveying the bottom of the Sea of Galilee, also known as Lake Kinneret, in northern Israel. Using sonar, they scanned the bottom topography and suddenly noticed a strange anomaly. The signals showed that beneath the water at depth lies something massive, and very regular in shape. A huge cone-shaped structure rose 9 meters above the lake bed, like an underwater pyramid. Its diameter was 70 meters, its mass about 60,000 tons. Yes, that is no joke. 60,000 tons of stone laid by hand. Of course, the first reaction, natural formation. But when divers went down, doubts vanished. This is man-made. The stones, basalt boulders, are laid in courses. Without mortar, just the force of gravity in the builder's precise hands. And now, the detective story begins. Who built it? When? And most of all, why? By its form, the object resembles a cairn, a mound typically associated with burial or ritual. Similar structures are found in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, but underwater, that is rare, especially of such scale. Dating the object is not simple. Water and silt do not favor the preservation of organics. But by comparing it with analogous structures on land, scholars suggest the cairn may be from the Bronze Age, which would make it roughly 4,000 years old. Interestingly, if that is true, then at the time of construction, it was not underwater. The lake level then was likely lower. It follows that the monument stood on dry land or in marshy ground near the shore. And then, what? Climatic changes? A rise in the water level? Or an earthquake? One way or another, today it is completely hidden beneath the lake's smooth surface. And had it not been for modern instruments, we would never have known of its existence. But pause for a second. How could something like this be built without cranes, tractors, and trucks? 60,000 tons. That is like dozens of modern tanks. Each boulder weighs hundreds of kilograms. They had to be hauled from a quarry, brought to the site, laid carefully, and then shaped into a stable cone. If it was built on land, it is hard enough. But if, after all, it was done in shallow water, then the task becomes many times more difficult. Manipulating heavy stones underwater is acrobatics at special forces level. What about purpose? There are several theories. One, the cairn was a tomb, perhaps for a chieftain, a shaman, a hero. Second, a ritual structure, a place of sacrifices, ceremonies, meetings with the spirits of ancestors. Third, a navigational marker. The lake served as an important node on ancient trade routes. Such a structure could have been a beacon of the ancient world. But there are no inscriptions, no bones, no artifacts found yet. Only stones, many stones. Silent. What is especially intriguing, there is nothing like it nearby, no other cairns, no remains of settlements. It stands alone, as a monument to something long gone, as an alien object that surfaced in the records by chance, a happy accident. So was this cairn part of an ancient shoreline, or was it deliberately immersed as something sacred? Perhaps we will never know, at least not yet, but it has already given us something important, a reminder that the greatest mysteries sometimes lie not in jungles, nor in deserts, nor underground, but right under water, in places where no one expects them. The Great Enclosure of Great Zimbabwe, an empire in stone. Now we head south, to the green hills of Zimbabwe, where lie the ruins of one of the most enigmatic and large-scale structures on the African continent. This is Great Zimbabwe, the ancient city whose name today belongs to an entire country. And no, it was not built by Phoenicians, nor by lost Egyptians, nor by Europeans, as colonial archaeologists once tried to claim. It is the creation of Africans, and truly impressive. The most famous part of the city is the so-called Great Enclosure, a vast ellipsoidal complex of stone. Its walls, more than 11 meters high and 5 meters thick, stand without a single drop of cement. Only perfectly fitted granite blocks, laid with minimal gaps, by eye, with centuries of practice, with skills passed from master to apprentice. The total perimeter is about 250 meters, and inside, towers, narrow passages, terraces, and a mysterious conical tower, without an entrance, without windows, without a functional purpose, but rich in symbolism. Some believe it symbolized a granary, a sign of abundance. Others, that it was purely ritual. Walking through the inner corridors, you enter a labyrinth where the view is limited, and the path seems subject to a script. Perhaps this was done deliberately, to direct, to slow, to make one feel respect, or even awe. Before whom? Before the ruler? Before the spirits? The entire complex was likely a politico-religious center, a place where power and faith intertwined. Stone here was not just building material, but a language of strength and sacredness. And you know what is striking? The scale of trade. In the ruins are found Chinese porcelain, Persian ceramics, Arab coins, glass beads from the Indian Ocean. That is, Great Zimbabwe was part of extensive trade routes. Gold, cattle, metal passed through it. But by the 15th century, the city gradually emptied. There are many versions: pasture depletion, shifts in trade routes, political upheavals. But the remaining walls are still here, and they remind us that before colonial history, there were empires on this land, and these empires left not a myth, but real, enduring architecture. The Ubaid lizard-headed figurines, reptiles from the depths of time. Now we will leap even farther back in time, to ancient Mesopotamia, southern Iraq, the early 20th century. British archaeologists excavate the old settlements of Ur, Eridu, and Tel al-Ubaid, and they find something unexpected: small clay figurines. Only their faces are not human. They resemble reptiles. Elongated snouts, huge almond-shaped eyes, smooth crania, sometimes with crests, and the bodies are entirely human. Some hold infants, and most strangely, the infants also have such lizard-headed faces. In total, several dozens of such figurines have been found. Some are detailed to the smallest elements: clothing, jewelry, even emotions. Who are they? Gods? People in masks? Heroes of forgotten myths? Or symbols of something we can no longer decipher? The Ubaid culture existed roughly from the 5th to the 4th millennia BCE, and is considered a precursor of Sumerian civilization. There were already temples, irrigation, pottery, domestic animals. Trade ran along the Persian Gulf, but writing did not yet exist, and everything we know about the beliefs of these people comes from artifacts. Some think these figurines depict shamans in transformation, fused with the spirits of animals. Others, that they are totemic beings or images of deities connected to the underworld. And some propose theories about reptilians, cosmic aliens, and so forth. But let us leave the science fiction to the conscience of Netflix. The fact remains: these figurines are unique. Nothing similar was found in Mesopotamia either before or after, and perhaps we have simply encountered a visual language whose meaning is irretrievably lost, or the echoes of myths that will never be told again. Dolmens, stone tables from all over the world. For the finale, we will look at one of the most global and at the same time least understood traditions. Dolmens, stone tables, structures of gigantic slabs that can be found in Ireland, France, the Middle East, Korea, India, and even in Africa. Usually a dolmen consists of several vertical slabs and a single horizontal one. The capstone, weighing dozens and sometimes hundreds of tons. Often they were part of burial mounds, but the earth has disappeared over time, leaving only the skeleton. What is astonishing? These structures were built all over the world, long before anyone could imagine that the Earth is round, not to mention intercontinental contacts. How did it happen that Ireland and South Korea came up with the same thing? The most famous dolmens are Pulnabrone in Ireland, weighing about 70 tons, and Brownshill, whose capstone weighs more than 100. And in Korea, there are thousands of such dolmens. Some are so massive that the engineering calculations bewilder even modern builders. Why were they built? The most widespread version: they are burials. Bones, ceramics, ornaments are found around them. But there are other hypotheses: observatories, sanctuaries, beacons, even portals to the spirit world. And the symbolism may vary. Perhaps dolmens were a sign of territory, the power of a clan, a connection with ancestors. But here is what is strange. Building such monuments required many people, resources, and time. And all this without wheels, without iron, without cranes, only will, stone, and it seems a great purpose. This speaks of the presence in these societies of strong organization and perhaps religious motivation. So dolmens are not just stone furniture. They are a global archetype, a reminder that ancient people thought on a grand scale and believed that stone could not only stand for centuries, but also speak for them across time. We have visited the bottom of a lake, the inside of rock, the tops of hills, and forgotten sands. We have seen stones that cannot be moved, masks that frighten with their style, and cities hidden from the light. And at every step, questions without answers. And what struck you the most? Do you have your own theory? Or perhaps you know of a place that should have made this list? Write comments and watch our previous episodes. They are insanely interesting too.